Have you ever been at a major life event, a wedding, a funeral, or a massive career win, and realized that while everyone else is crying or cheering, you're feeling absolutely nothing? It's not that you're bored and you aren't a sociopath. It's more like a blown fuse between your brain and your body, leaving you in a state of high-definition static. If you're neurodivergent, an INTJ, or just someone who relies heavily on logic, you've likely been called cold or robotic by people who don't understand your operating system. You might have even started to believe you're missing a fundamental piece of the human experience, as if everyone else received a software update that you missed. But within the framework of existential neurobiology, this numbness isn't a flaw. It's a sophisticated data processing error. Your hardware is working. Your sensors are online. The signal just isn't reaching the user interface because the bandwidth is being consumed by higher-order cognitive functions. Today, we're looking at the hidden sense causing this disconnect, interoception, and how to recalibrate your system to turn that numbness back into actionable data. We're going to stop trying to feel in the traditional messy sense and start learning how to read the report so you can finally navigate your life with the precision you've been looking for. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into why the way you've been taught to handle emotions is likely failing you, especially if you possess a brain that prioritizes systems over sentiment. For those of us who lean into logic and objective reality, traditional psychology can feel like a foreign language or a collection of vague metaphors. It's all sitting with your grief, embracing your inner child, or finding your center. But for the analytical brain, that advice is often functionally useless because it doesn't provide a mechanism for action. We don't need metaphors. We need a technical manual for the nervous system. We're moving past the fluff to look at the existential neurobiology of emotions. This is the intersection where the why of existence meets the mechanics of the nervous system, the place where meaning is derived from biological feedback. We'll explore interoception, your internal sense of self, and why numbness is actually a protective biological state designed to keep your system from crashing under the weight of unprocessed data. By the end of this video, you won't just understand why you feel numb. You'll have a toolkit to reboot the connection between your mind and your biology, allowing you to use your emotions as the high-level telemetry they were meant to be. Let's start with a hard truth. Feelings are not mystical clouds or spiritual visitations. In neurobiological terms, a feeling is simply your brain's best guess at what your internal physical sensations mean in a given context. Think of your body as a high-end server room. It's constantly sending telemetry data to the CPU, your brain. This includes heart rate, lung expansion, gut tension, and blood pressure. This internal sensing is called interoception. While we are usually taught about the external senses that help us navigate the world around us, interoception is actually our most fundamental sense because it checks the status of the biological machine itself. It is the check engine light, the fuel gauge, and the temperature sensor all rolled into one. For the analytical mind, the problem isn't usually that the data is missing. It's the latency or the lack of a proper driver to translate that data into the conscious mind. Most people have a low latency connection. They feel a slight flutter in their stomach and immediately think, "I'm anxious." But for us, that signal is filtered through a complex firewall of logic, pattern recognition, and systemic analysis. We process so much external information, projections, futurecasting, and structural flaws, that the internal pings from our own organs get deprioritized in the processing queue until the system is forced to shut down. When you feel numb, the data hasn't actually stopped flowing. Your brain has simply decided the data is too noisy, too contradictory, or too irrelevant to the current mission, so it mutes the output to save processing power. In existential neurobiology, your system is prioritizing stability over signal. Think of it as an emergency circuit breaker that trips when the voltage gets too high. If incoming data is overwhelming due to chronic stress, complex trauma, or even just high-intensity cognitive work, the brain cuts the feed to keep your logic and motor functions running. This is why you can be in the middle of a massive life crisis and feel strangely dead inside or calm, only to have a total system crash 2 weeks later when you're finally in a safe environment. The data was being buffered the whole time. It just wasn't being integrated into your conscious experience. This lag is a hallmark of the neurodivergent experience, particularly for those on the spectrum or with ADHD. Whether you're an INTJ or a heavy systems thinker, your interoceptive awareness is likely atypical. You aren't repressing feelings in the way a Freudian therapist might suggest. Your brain is performing a high-level administrative task of data management to prevent a total system failure. To fix the numbness, we have to identify your specific error code within the interoceptive system. First, there is hyposensitivity, being essentially blind to your internal state. You don't realize you're hungry until you're shaking with low blood sugar. And you don't realize you're angry until you've already snapped at someone. It's like a pilot ignoring the fuel gauge because they're too focused on the navigation map and the weather patterns 200 miles ahead. You are so externalized in your thinking that the me data is treated as background noise. Second, there is hypersensitivity. This is the more ironic cause of numbness. Here, every internal signal feels like a piercing alarm. A slight increase in heart rate feels like a heart attack. A minor stomach cramp feels like a medical emergency. To prevent a total crash from this sensory overload, the brain hits the emergency shut-off switch. This is what we call functional numbness. You aren't unfeeling, you are overfeeling to the point of a circuit break. This is why a therapist asking, "How does that make you feel?" often results in a blank stare or a shrug. You can't run emotion software if the interoceptive hardware is unplugged or screaming. We need to stop looking for the emotion and start looking for the electrical signal that precedes it. Now, I want to speak specifically to the INTJs and the system thinkers who use logic as a primary defense mechanism. Your brain wants a why for everything. If you can't find a logical, justifiable, and evidence-based reason to feel a certain way, maybe your career is going well, your bills are paid, and your life looks great on paper, your brain might discard the physical signal entirely. You feel a wave of heaviness or a sudden spike in cortisol. You scan your environment for a cause, find nothing wrong in the external world, and then you tell yourself, there's no reason to be upset, therefore, I am not upset. This is using your massive intellect to gaslight your own biology. The problem is that your body doesn't read your spreadsheets or your 5-year plans. It's still producing the stress hormones. It's still clenching your jaw and tightening your chest. In existential neurobiology, we stop asking the subjective and often misleading question, how do I feel? And start asking the objective, technical question, what is the physical state of my hardware right now? Instead of looking for a story or a narrative to justify your state, check the vitals. Is the heart rate high? Is the breath shallow? Label the raw, my trapezius muscles are contracted at a level 7 out of 10. Ironically, once you acknowledge the raw data without trying to fix it or justify it with logic, the firewall often drops and the numbness lifts naturally because the data has finally been acknowledged by the CPU. We can't just decide to feel through sheer willpower. That's like trying to force a frozen computer to work by clicking the mouse harder. We have to rebuild the physical pathways between the body and the brain. Here is your 3-step protocol for interoceptive calibration. Step 1. The body scan audit. 3 times a day, set a haptic alarm on your phone. Don't check for feelings, check for stats. Focus on temperature, tension, and hunger. Are your hands cold? Is your jaw tight? Is your stomach empty? We're just strengthening the physical cable between the body and the conscious mind. Step 2. Use physicality labels. Stop trying to decide if you're sad or anxious, which are vague terms. Use clinical, descriptive language. Say, I have a tightness in my solar plexus, or I feel a buzzing sensation in my forearms. This bypasses the emotional filters and speaks directly to the brain's data centers. Step 3. The hard reset. If you're in a state of total numbness and you need to reconnect quickly, stop trying to think your way out. Force a strong interoceptive signal that the brain cannot ignore. This could be a cold shower to trigger the mammalian dive reflex, heavy lifting to provide intense muscle feedback, or intense breath work. It's like pinging a server with a high-priority packet to see if it's still responding. You are forcing the brain to acknowledge the body's existence, which breaks the loop of intellectualization. Why does all of this technical calibration actually matter for your life? Because in the study of existential neurobiology, numbness isn't just a lack of joy, it's a lack of direction. Emotions are the primary drivers of intuitive decision-making and value alignment. If you are numb, you are essentially flying a high-performance jet in thick fog without any instruments. You might make logical decisions that look perfect on a graph, but are biologically and existentially disastrous because you can't feel the friction or the revulsion of the wrong path. Recalibrating your interoception makes you more integrated, which is where true high performance and executive function actually come from. It's not about being a robot, it's about being a pilot who finally trusts his instruments. When you stop fearing the static of your emotions and start seeing it as a signal to check your hardware, you gain a level of self-mastery that most people never achieve. Your coldness was never a lack of humanity. It was a way of protecting a highly sensitive and complex system from being overwhelmed. Now that you have the manual, you're learning how to manage that sensitivity without shutting down the entire power grid. You are moving from a state of being a passenger in a body you don't understand to being the lead engineer of your own existence. At the end of the day, feelings are just biological reports sent to your conscious mind for review. If you're neurodivergent or an INTJ, your reports are simply written in a different code, one that requires translation and calibration, not suppression or judgment. You aren't empty, you aren't broken, and you aren't a robot. You're just recalibrating a very complex piece of machinery. If this data-driven, analytical approach to the mind resonates with you more than traditional therapy ever has, hit the subscribe button. We do practical psychology for the analytical mind. No fluff, no toxic positivity, just the mechanics of how we function. I want you to drop a comment below with the word data. If you've ever used logic to talk yourself out of a physical sensation, or share how you've managed to reboot when you feel that numbness creeping in. It's time to stop being a passenger in your own skin and start being the lead engineer of your own biology. Optimize your system, trust your raw data over your narratives, and I'll see you in the next one.